Meeting of the Preservation Board is now in order. Good afternoon. I'm going to call a roll to establish who is here for the record. Commissioner Fassman, are you here?
I'm here.
Good. Commissioner Robinson, are you here?
I am.
Commissioner Killeen, are you here?
Yes.
Commissioner Byzantine, are you here?
Yes.
Alderman Commissioner Schmidt, are you here?
I am here.
Did I miss anybody? I did not. Commissioners, has anyone read the minutes from July the 28th?
Yes, I did.
Is there a motion in regard to those minutes?
Motion that we approve them.
Second. There. And, okay, seconded by many people, like fourth or eighth. Hearing no objection to approving those minutes, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Now I didn't hear any objections, and those minutes are approved. Minutes of September the 22nd. Anybody read them?
I am. Yes, we approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Robinson. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving those minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay then, those minutes are also approved. Commissioners, looking down at the agenda. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. Okay with that order? Okay with those items? Anything else? Okay, do a motion to approve this agenda.
So moved. Second.
And seconded. With no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we have an agenda. Minutes, agenda, roll. Let's go.
September meeting date?
Okay.
During the roll.
Let's take a look at that. Commissioners, we have been asked whether or not we would like to have the December meeting, the so-called Christmas meeting, on December the 15th. Everybody look at their books and tell me what you think. Is it a Monday?
Here.
Okay. I really like it when we meet on a holiday, but do we have any anticipation that will be a meeting in which there are lots of things on it?
No, but so far has to tell. Our meeting in November, one before Thanksgiving, is looking interesting already, so hopefully December will be.
If the December meeting is not containing a lot of things, the commissioners like to have it by telephone.
I'd like to have one of you.
If in fact there are no items on the December meeting, which we have considered moving to December the 15th, we could have it by telephone.
Oh, yeah, those are us.
Okay, just keep that in mind. And we'll watch for official notifications of it out. Okay. Preliminary review agenda item A4167.
Agenda item is for the construction of a new residence at this site here, 4167 Creek. A rather large space in between the two buildings, the construction site and the divisional property. The site is building on the left side of the gap, and there'll be two side yards more adjacent to the building on the far right. You see that here a little better. Here's the lot with that address. In the North I-44 Historic District, on a block with some vacancies, but quite a few. Here's the aerial view of that. Three houses there to the corner, and towards the east, see the alignment on the street is a little varied. So one setback on the rather dominant one, house in the middle varied from that one. Next to a shot of the building site, we have a really strong street wall of flat buildings across the street, all the dark red bricks. The north side of the street here on the right has a little bit more varied building types and building materials. And here are the three houses immediately to the west on the left-hand shot. In the context convex to the east, keep these in mind with the light colored above house with the gabled roof is to the east, and the new building will be separated from that building by there's a site plan and showing those side yards. And another important thing, I put a black line on here, an artistic black line is mine, to show the setback of the buildings that are closest to the proposed new building along to the back. And that is the setback line, of course, is projected in front of it. This house is more in alignment with the building to the east that separated from it visually by the considerable expanse of site. This view of the proposed new house and block front showing the like new houses. And close-up of the facade of the new house and the site plan. Particularly there'll be a parking pad behind the house. Positioning of the house, the east side will highly visible, more so than many houses because of the side yard. So its design, I think, is important. A little hard to read here, but the porch is recessed, and that's why the front door is the window in front of the front door. And then there's a side wing, partial side wing. That's checked on the right-hand side of the building, and then the single roof deck on top of the side wing and the opening front. This view, I think, shows that a little better, the recessed porch. The main facade side of the porch is recessed, and therefore it extends the front of the house to the west, which is framing. And the coloration of the facade, the red brick, dark gray, cement siding, and that very light colored cement siding indicates the more than one color for any one facade except for the space. And we have a visible there on the side facade. And in here, that. We can see it exactly like this right here in the elevation site. And west elevation, which will not be very visible on the side. That side is a general gangway width from the other building. And then your elevation is shown. The architect of the project is provided these studies of materials and colors in the district, as I decided that was important here. And these are used of buildings along the north side of the street, and there is some variation with the prominent building with a buff brick and the gabled roof. Second row, there's some other grayish and strips. Again, most of the buildings are restored. And across the street is very strict, as many of our blocks are. I'll leave this view of the facade here as I go through how the design needs to historic standards. As you know, we've had some other contemporary designs in the historic district. And they have those applied with materials and some of the other standards. The use of the brick complies, but it is much less of a percentage of the facade than board has used before. It's been meant for it as a material, is not one that is recommended for use. We use it as a substitute for wood. Wood is very clearly pointed to magnet material used in very small quantities and material as shown here. The height and the width of the building complies. The standards for the use of details such as cornice of the roof, brackets, etc. is not complied with in the contemporary design. The windows do not comply in practice, either the fenestration pattern or the size and positioning of it is probably the other historic district residents. The material is okay, but there's contemporary positioning of windows, various sizes and locations, not have any visual relationship to how windows are placed on the side. Growth actually doesn't comply. The single pitch growth is not found on the block where the mandate is to find some comparable growth. The wall shows a yard would comply. So we have a proposal here that doesn't meet any of the standards except for the height and the width. I think that the board has been very consistent in sticking to the materials that are mandated in the historic district standards. Because they are, they make it very clear that only the materials that were used historically in the district are appropriate based on compatibility for new construction. And they emphasize a great deal of use of color. And with the variety of materials and the varied colors on this building, the mandate for visual compatibility, I don't believe it's met in the sort of first glance situation or upon further study. I recommend that you approve a design that meets the historic district standards, but in my recommendations, my comments here, I'm pointing two things that could bring this house into more visual compatibility, meet more of the standards that would need to be spread on the entire street-facing facade and the highly visible east facade, and to use one dominant color, one most likely to use it. Also, pushing the house back slightly so that the main facade rose above the porches of the house to the west and hold that street line, and also make this house more visually compatible and more compatible in its placement in the physical world. With a large side yard, I don't feel the lot the rear yard is just critical. So I'm pointing these out to you and ask you to consider whether these changes would be sufficient to bring this into period standards, having a contemporary house that is compatible in this.
You see the window proportions on the roof? So you just let those go?
Well, I mean, either we go to a totally different design or we leave some aspects. And so, either could determine that it doesn't meet enough standards and it needs to be designed so nearly all we have approved on this don't literally meet the standards in one or two ways. In this case, lots of ways it doesn't meet the standards. I was looking for a way to go forward. I just wanted to just say this design is compatible.
Commissioners, further questions? Thank you. The applicant here?
So I'm Brent Grin, UIC. We're developing this home we have for our clients. Vernon Buttigieg is here representing his family. His wife, Mary Garcia. My daughters are the future tenants or residents of this house. I'll explain. Back up. Give you some background into what our design intentions are. So, start with the elevation. We had this large gap. We were just finishing. We actually closed the buyer at the home on the right, which is one of our pretty big anomalies in the neighborhood, the historic building stock. I'm not sure which way to point to. It's the buff color 3-story brick. With third story differentiated by the what was in a shingle facade. Now we have a cement fiber shingle. reworking of it, so it's got the 2 stories with the 3rd story portion, and then to the left you have what would have been a more conventional 2-family in the neighborhood. So the Leggett Myers Historic District outside of the Leggett Myers facilities themselves are predominantly multi-family buildings, almost all two stories with the exception of about 3 homes between one. So we're trying to balance between the home on the left, the 2-family, and the 3-story at the older building on the right. We're doing that in a few ways. One is with the setback. So the setback on the left, that you mentioned, is about 10 or 12 feet, or not, but about 10 feet further back than the house on the right. And but has a pretty significant porch, which happens to just about align with the color brick house. So to have a sensitive way of approaching how those two come together, that's where the setback came from. The secondary plane of the elevation aligns with the home on the left. The front plane of the home, the brick, aligns with the porch on the left and the house on the right. So we're trying to balance out a little bit of setback. And then the 3rd story, the differentiation materials, has to do with the kind of mirroring the 3-story on the side, or at least relating to the massing of the 3-story portion on the side in a more contemporary motif. Feel a little bit better than this perspective. We have one from the other, sounds like having a slide. But you can see the kind of in and out that we're trying to do with the facade to balance that. And that's the rationale for the setback or proposing building. The material on the facade, I know the historic standards are written towards what was there originally in the neighborhood. Frankly, we built on the adjacent block 10 homes that have almost 50% siding on them, so there is a pretty large precedent for elevation D on our models, or other models, both on the 4200 block and the 3. We have set a pretty significant precedent for the use of siding, and it's not on the facade, a handful, a number of those are on the facade, but then also each on the corner. And as a designer, what we are always challenged with and struggling with is buildings that we're not doing entirely brick homes. We haven't done is finding a rationale, an artistic rationale for how we divide between what's brick and what's siding. And frankly, we think this is the best composition, strongest composition, to let the main piece that comes out a little bit further towards the street be all brick, and the appropriate transition is on this 2-story portion that's slightly set back from the street, so kind of almost a secondary addition portion to the larger mass. That was our rationale for where we make that grade. Be pretty opposed, or as a designer, of changing that material. As for the windows, again, I kind of go back to this. We are trying to do this first on the foundation. We are trying to balance out datums across the facade. You can't see the mullions on the upper window, but that does line still on the home to the left, and then balance that with the home to the right, which has a slightly larger opening. We're trying to draw horizontal datums across the site, not necessarily extensive. But again, we use almost the same windows on the adjacent block. I think it's 570. So there is a precedent. I'm happy to answer any questions. The room is here. Questions about
Commissioners, questions?
Is there a development plan here by ordinance? Is Alderman Rhodey introduced?
Well, this is, I'm sorry. This falls within the Freetown West redevelopment area administered by the Garden District Commission. So it's within our larger area.
So with tax abatement?
Yeah, that's administered by the Garden District Commission. Actually, the Freetown West redevelopment.
So do you know the ordinance number for that?
No.
The reason for the questioning is that there's a local historic district here.
Right.
Theoretically, one reason to not follow the historic district is if there's a development plan that calls for something else. is there such an ordinance to call for something else?
The ordinance goes back to before we started construction. You know, we built or renovated over 30 residences in the house. Done about $10 million of commercial construction.
Which ordinance? The local historic?
The ordinance that sets up the power of the Freetown West Development Corporation, which came after the Brian Sun development of the west of their or east. Sorry, it was the portion of what was McCreetown, now Mechanic west of Thurman Avenue, which we've been working on redevelopment for 7 years.
So on what legal basis are you asking us not to follow the local historic district?
Say whatever the basis was, the other houses that we built, deciding on the plan.
Which is what?
I'm not sure. That same design was just approved a couple years ago.
I think there wasn't much of a block face. It was facing the highway, I believe.
No, it's an adjacent block. There's a...
This certainly was not on the block.
Built that house.
Not a house.
Right. Thank you.
Further questions, commissioners? Let me clarify. On setbacks, you say no. On material, you say no?
Much more, the setback, I don't think it's the urban design is being very passionate about what this neighborhood is done with the neighborhood. I think the setback is appropriate. I think it looks better if it's like this. I think we could yield in setback. But I do think the massing and siding and brick contrast is something that's very strong.
Okay. Commissioners, any clarification? Thank you. Karen, you want to say something? Okay. Commissioners, do I have a motion? Alderman?
I recommend that the Conservation Board retain and consider that correcting the applicant to material and do that back line. And
Is there a second?
second.
Discussion?
Do we have some letter from the neighborhood or from the elders?
No, we don't have any indication of support or otherwise. There is import siding used kind of for one design that bay. Could have been a wood side of projecting bay and maybe there. But I think in the same sort of time thing, like kind of a creek, we're seeing more and more and more of the material and get to a little
So at some point, there'll be so many precedents that there won't be a historic district. We will essentially be built historic district.
Well, right, and I mean, there are other smaller things. The door, the standards say the doors must be wood. Well, they use it, steel, some of the doors. You know, that's kind of a relatively minor matter. But it's a big dominant aspect. This is a visual about. I think the separation from the new house from the old brick house is so wide to really reduce the relationship to that. Otherwise, more in the middle of the space, he's trying to put a building here right next to the house.
The motion before the board raises the issue of material, the single flow roof, and setback.
Oh, I couldn't hear that last phrase, it was from your proposal.
With it? Okay.
Yeah, address it at meeting.
Meaning we're not going to approve it.
All right. So I just want to clarify when you say address.
Yeah. Chairman,
We're done. Sorry. Commissioners, there's a motion on the floor, was made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item B4056.
This is a preliminary review application to rehabilitate this one-story concrete block building, which is in the Shaw Historic District. And it is right next to a building that you saw a couple of months earlier, a service station. Both these buildings dated in the mid-1960s, and both are considered non-contributing resources to the historic district. These front elevations. And this is the proposal, and those of you that were at the July meeting will recognize the elements of this redesign, which are similar to what was previously approved for the conversion of the service station to a single family. Essentially what's happening here, your agenda is incorrect when it says it's being stucco. It is in fact just being painted. The building is, as I said, concrete block, and it's already been painted this lovely red color. Very little of its original character remains, but at its best it was a very modest mid-century design. This project will use the same materials, the wood siding, the metal elements, and the colors of the proposal that was approved. I did some other photos of the building. The proposal is to convert this to a cafe with some studio, yoga studio and other use at the rear. The existing parking lot here, which is the white area in the upper left, will be substantially reduced, and there will be gardens, landscaping, planted. The gray area is the development, the 4066 Russell that was already shown. Here's 4066 in its current shape. Again, like 4066, this project does not comply with the historic district standards. Again, I will emphasize that it is a non-contributing, and in this particular instance, it's a fairly ugly building. Its colors do replicate some light facades that exist on the street, context to the east. Some of these are painted, but they're also limestone fronted buildings. So now that it's compatible, it is remaining a one-story building. That is also compatible. That's P-shape. You take that one over there. Another non-contributing building. So based upon the fact, as I said, that it's a non-contributing structure, we are recommending that the board overlook the variance standards and approve the preliminary review based on current proposals and review of final drawings and materials by staff.
Commissioners, you have questions for Jan?
So when there's a non-contributing building, are we primarily looking at materials and what you were talking about in terms of
Well, we
setbacks.
sort of looked at it as new construction as well as we could apply the existing standards at that. So essentially, it's going to not be obtrusive and blend in with the street, but it would not necessarily have to be.
Commissioner, further questions? Is there a commissioner not inclined to support this on preliminary review? We have a motion, please. Commissioner Container? We do not? Unless you'd like to make it worse. Commissioner Container?
Yes, I'd like to move that the board grant preliminary approval to the project stipulation that final drawings, exterior material finishes are reviewed and approved by the staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioners, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item C, please. 2851.
We have is a proposal to replace existing Quick Trip driveway. I'm going to go to the draw real quick. Side pick, the ordinance. We all know this one, Southern Graveway. Kind of the tip of the clock park is where it was built back in '96, I believe. So that's just context. Technology was part of the historic district. This was no review before. Yeah. That's where we're at now. This is the existing site plan. That shows you where it's at on Graveway. Pensalozzi and context, we all know again the area, but looking back on Graveway. Here's some existing historic context nearby to the site. Up Graveway, we have a mix of single-story and two-story residential commercial buildings, and then along Nebraska, it's all residential. And again, the current site. This is a proposal. This is the proposed new construction of the site. It's their the new prototype called Phase 3. What's the name for it? Gen 3. Very fancy name. New Quick Trip. This proposal is just like the one that's built over in City Grove. The biggest part of this, you'll notice, is the new orientation of the building. They're going to swap around and face it away from Graveway. So facing Graveway comes down, south, and you're able to see the front of it. You see the old building in dark, the old canopy. Construction is the here's the elevation, the east side brick, and pilasters or columns are the black tile. I have a sample for your material. Pretty much.
Welcome to one.
Yeah, I'll show it to you. I'm going to get an idea of that panel, the material. Curious what it looks like. Oh, this is the back side. This will be a set of spaces in Nebraska. So, as you saw in the site plan, this looks like you butt up to the face the house. Side, blurry, I apologize. First side is face towards the neighborhood itself, and south they let you face Graveway. Correct. Here is just going to have some renderings of natural elevation, but this shows Graveway looking back. This is Graveway again, looking kind of west. The idea of, if you're between that Graveway, what you'll see now is close to This is a retaining wall. If you propose, we'll address that a little bit. And see it with swaps around. Okay, so the Fox Park standards really lack a good direction in terms of commercial design, and I'm going to say it's not going to apply a lot. I read through these, but again, unfortunately, the design standards don't really address new construction, especially new construction like new gas stations. So, direction there is really lacking in terms of review versus what's being proposed. I'll go through these real fast. Signage, it does comply partly. There is a proposal to do a backlit sign on the front. The standards do not allow backlit signs. But the monument sign still does comply. It's a little taller than it is now, but it's going to go in the same spot, see the same design. See the sign shot here. The sign there, it's going to be the same spot it is now, just a little taller. Okay, so construction, it's just a blanket versus commercial. So what it says is it's based on model examples. Obviously, the proposed design is not based on model examples, so it does not comply with that element standard. The site portion also does not comply. It says that it should align with facade. Obviously, given the odd shape of the parcel, the use of the building, it's not going to comply with the way it's cited. Also, the setback does not comply. The building is set 12 feet off of Bradway. So anything that is next to it historically, which is to the south, right on the street, doesn't comply with that either. Mass also doesn't really comply. The majority of the historic buildings along Bradway are 2 and 3 stories. Again, there are some single-story buildings down that way, but overall, it tries to comply with the mass portion of the theater. Scale, it does probably comply. Again, we can reference the single-story buildings on the block. Portion, that also does not comply. It differs from all the portions of the historic buildings along Bradway. The ratio of solid void, windows, doors, they comply with that. Material usage, it does comply partially. It's brick, so it will comply with that. Again, the black tile along the houses or the columns, that does not comply with overall mostly brick building. The facade portion does comply as well because the back is all brick. Retaining walls is actually kind of a fluid situation. They're going to redesign and have a more compliant retaining wall. So as we saw originally, it did not comply. We're going to be getting a new design and actually will meet standards. We'll have a more of a stone look, be vertical, with a cap on it. So that'll be issue one element that will actually serve the sort of nod to the area that will apply. So going through finding the facts, given the vagaries and the standards in regards to commercial buildings, the site restrictions, the use of the area, we feel that we need to overlook what's there and we're going to pull this design. I do have a letter of support from Alderman Gracia. She supports it as submitted. We also have not heard anything negatively from the neighborhood association. They are working with the owners on other issues, not design related. They're okay with the design as well. They're going to give a letter to work out some other issues, security, and she may address that as well. We don't have a letter from them, but there is no objection.
Are the sidewalks on 4 sides?
There will be, at least on these 3, I believe on their side as well.
Yeah.
I think on the rest of the side, I think there was on all 4 sides, so they will have access to it, Kind of a hassle now. The side, as you know, is very triangular, it's a little mucky to get around, so I think this will actually improve access to the side.
You're basically saying that we can replace the linear QT with spaceship QT if we like it.
Pretty much, that's what we're going to do. Based on the findings, we recommend that the board grant your approval to approve the construction with installation of the final plans, design details be approved by CRO.
Questions for Bob?
And Bob, you're okay with approving the you're okay with approving actually the sign and the retaining wall?
Yeah, I think so. We're working at, we'll do it at that level because again, sign's not that much taller. And we're going to see a new sign. Do I can see it from? Yeah, the sign's 1 foot difference, but in terms of the retaining wall itself, I think then we'll have
I have something.
the drawing with it looks a lot better.
Is there any way to make the gas prices lower?
Right,
I'm working on the rendering. They actually are lower than what's on the bottom.
Right, we noted that.
Okay, thank you. Gwen?
I
I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I think you did a great job presenting it. This is our Gen 3 design, and we're looking to scrape it to put our new one in.
Step closer to the microphone. Commissioner, you have a question?
Yes, where,
I don't.
Did you tell the truth?
Nope, not a preliminary review.
oh, yeah.
Oh, now you're... So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. We have worked with them on the retaining wall, and I brought a photo of Betsy after what we've been talking about. We're going to make it vertical, and we kind of all agreed that the limestone color wouldn't work, so we're working on the final component through our corporate office to get a color that's more natural to match with the brick and the canopy brick, so it looks like it's all very fluid together. The stone will be it will be vertical, and it will have a cap on it, so you can.
Commissioner, further questions? Thank you. For a motion, please. Melanie? You use a lot of gas.
I would like to propose that the Preservation Board grant preliminary approval for the proposed new construction with the stipulation that final plans and design details be approved by the Cultural Resources Office.
Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, agenda item D, 634.
This is a preliminary review of the construction of addition to the field house. Property is owned by the Gene Fieldhouse Foundation. The applicant is Jennifer Coffey, who's been working on designing the addition. I will say that the design of this addition involves a lot of people in the development of design, and involves in a way the care that to design, in addition to what is city landmark number 4, but also a national historic site. And many of the special approaches to designing an addition that would be secondary to the resource and fit into the context. Didn't really work in this situation because the house was so small, the addition had to be larger, and in fact the addition creates the context. You see here on the site plan, there aren't very many buildings in the vicinity of your house, and that's what I mean by the additional house. Here on South Broadway, and this will give right here to elevation of the center project. Go back here, you see the site of the field house landmark is just a plot of the landmark. So we're primarily concerned with the design of the glass bridge that connects the main addition to the landmark site. But of course, we're also concerned about the addition that establishes the context for the field house and can either improve the context or not. And so we're having an eye on the entire project, but are mostly concerned with the glass bridge. One of the goals of this project was to afford accessibility to more of the house. You can see there at the main entrance, there's that flight of steps. It's hard to get to the main floor, let alone take the floor above. So there's a great deal of study of having a 3-story bridge with an elevator and stairs in it that would afford access to all stories of the field house, and that would determine people down. So from a preservation point of view, it might be a little bit better, and I think it's an appropriate compromise so everyone gets to see the main public room. So you also notice the brick wall that encloses the yard. That was a project paid for by the School for Children in the 10A, kind of an important part of the site. It's an elementary bird's eye view, I believe, showing the museum and interior spaces, shows that bridge a little bit more. It has to be slightly elevated, and hence the term bridge, so it enters the main house floor level. Also, I'd like to point out, go back here a little bit, you may remember that the field house was part of Walsh's row houses and townhouses. Big long row here of houses, and the field house is the only one. So the dimensions and the modules of the design of the addition and the width of the bridge recall the width of the row houses. And the openings in the addition and some little type elements there of how those row houses used to be. So we have a lot of subtle hesitation of the old row houses. Site plan shows how the bridge connects over the so the parking would be away from the field house on the north edge of the property. Another shows the relationship with the addition and that bridge back the other way. And our attention here to the wall and the windows. The window, entire actually north wall of the house was redone in the 1930s after the demolition of the rest of the row houses were about that time. So it's faced with brick and bay of windows put in at each level. This is a non-original window that would be converted. And a portion of this wall needs to be reduced in height so the bridge transfers it to as much of it will be kept as possible from the street that would still appear without the wall and the gate. So it's a very light pressure on the wall. So returning here to this view, how it all fits. And I think that much consideration were asked in the proposal here. One of the guidelines of the landmark was that we would maintain the essential character of the landmark. And both comments about the field house and the National Historic Landmark documentation comments about the house point to its understanding and maintaining its perception of this as the wall. And I think we're supporting that with the design of the addition. And create an appropriate context there for the house. It has the fully glazed bridge that connects the field house and the addition. It is that contact glazed connector between part of the middle part of the property. Very light touch. And one window in the wall. So I think the design of the museum relates to and complements the field house and establishes have context for the city and national history. All in all, I recommend the board grant preliminary approval of the design to final exterior materials and finishes.
Commissioner, question?
Jesse, so there's not a historic district. We're really reviewing this on the impact related to the landmark itself.
Right, and so the only part of the whole project that's on the landmark site is a portion of the right, I mean, and if, you know, if we would have, in our consultations with the field house folks and the park service and the designers, we thought the design of the museum was not a good fit for the design of the field house. Made that known and whatever, but we really don't have approval or
The detached garage on the lot behind the field house. It says that the construction requirements for form garages it says comply. Is there a garage?
garage.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'd like to say this.
Wrong one.
More questions? Further questions? Commissioner, is anybody opposed to it? Commissioner, consider a motion.
Yes. I'd like to move that the board grant preliminary approval for the project, the stipulation of final drawings and exterior material finishes are reviewed and approved by staff.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? I like it. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item E, 1923. You have a testimony already? Alderman? You want to
I do have.
ask a question now? Now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess,
This is another preliminary review. This time in the Soulard Historic District for the rehabilitation of this building, which many of you may be aware of. It is in very fragile structural condition. This location, this is close to the front elevation, and the dormer tipping into the back. Now, let me also point out to you the unusual site conditions, because while the house faces 10th Street, this is the property line at that, so they have essentially no backyard. They have a substantial yard to either side, however, which was once the location of other houses. So, what is being proposed is because of the substantial investment that's going to be required to mitigate all of the damage on this building. It was not considered to be viable to rehabilitate as a single family, and it's being converted into two attached single families, or semi-detached single families. This is what the row originally looked like. This is the building we're looking at now. And then there was building on that side and building on that side. So, what is being proposed, I should show you the side. On the left is the corner of Allen and 10th Street. And you can see that's the adjacent property. Really, they don't have any rear yard. And then this is looking from the alley to the north towards the north elevation. On this proposal, construct two additions, one on either side, and then there's firewall down the center here. So this would be one unit, and this would be the second unit. Okay. Now, this is particularly designed to return the appearance of the original block space. So these additions currently are at the same building line as the main building being rehabilitated. That is not in compliance with the requirements of the Soulard Historic District standards. They do not allow additions to semi-public facades, and that is what these are under the current definition. Additions should be at the rear. The staff is recommending, because we'd like to take this very early, very fragile historic resource, that the board grant an exception to the standards and allow these additions. CSRD has worked with the architect and developers to come up with this idea. The original proposal was to set the additions back some, about 2 feet, I think. At our request, that's been changed because we feel that returning the block space is very important, and also if they're stepped back, then it begins to look a little like they're additions rather than freestanding buildings. So that was done at our request. We shall point out that there will be 2 carports here to comply with the standards, and the entrance should be from the alley as required. And these are the 2 side elevations of the additions. But at this point, they're considering doing doors here, I guess, right? These aren't shown yet because the design of those doors has not been worked out. We feel very strongly that a door in this location on the street-facing side, which is the south elevation, is problematic and doesn't really replicate any sort of historic quality. but at this point, we don't have any value. So, the rear elevation. This is the corner lot where the carport will be. Shot. That's the corner of Allen and 10th Street, looking towards now the streetscape and some context. This is 10th Street. And this is at the corner here is a two-story garage building that was built in 2007. It was approved by the Conservation Board at that time. I don't think it was the most successful infill building, but was approved. That's the streetscape to the east, on both sides of Allen, and the streetscape to the north, or to the west, I'm sorry. Staff is recommending that preliminary approval be granted to the final construction drawings being reviewed by the Cultural Resource Center.
Just a quick thought or question. On a side door, if a door was put in and properly done, wouldn't it make that appear to be a fonder house?
I think that's the general idea, make it look like an actual single-family house. But it's important, I think, that the character, I'm trying to get back to here, it look appropriate. And that may be the resolution, that may be to construct a porch over it. So, but that is still to be discussed.
Other questions? Thank you. Mr. Miller? The record, tell us your name.
Maureen McMillan?
Questions from Ms. McMillan? Thank you.
Welcome.
I would like to comment. I think you've done a great job trying to enhance this property.
Thank you, thank you. Well, we'd like to save it while we can, so.
Okay, Commissioners, could we hear a motion?
Motion.
And if it is in favor, could the reason for the variance be the testimony by staff on the economic infeasibility of the existing building?
I actually have two bases.
Okay.
The Preservation Board grants preliminary approval with the stipulation that the additions are cited at the building line and final construction documents and exterior building materials are reviewed and approved by the Cultural Resource Office staff, and my motion is based on the fact of the economic hardship in this case, difficulty of rehabbing this property, and in addition to that, that there is no back yard.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Commissioners, I would normally call a break here, but I'd like to break the agenda and call agenda item H2123, please. We are reconstituted now to hear appeal for director's denial. Because when the quorum is present, ask to introduce themselves, give an address, and to promise that they will tell the truth.
Certified copies of ordinance 4689 as submitted by 4965, and type ordinance 796. Does anyone think we can?
owner installed aluminum windows in the building without a permit. He gave a 4 front windows to the location of the building. There's on an alley, and then there's also a wide yard here back. This is the side elevation, which is also placed in the alley. They are very just of non-conforming windows. Unfortunately, they weren't not used to be approved historically. So there are some issues with dams of installed windows are wider and there would normally be a short window. The roof rail is lower. There's a plan with our but there is a flange here, and the rail, and it's broken flat. Also, there's no clean lines of this flat appearance. The owner has applied for a permit he did apply for a permit to replace the front windows with appropriate wood replacement windows. So those are now not an issue. Side windows, this is a couple of spots now. They are circles on the side was originally brass, and there was aluminum frame for a storm window, which he has. The Hyde Neighborhood Association did send a letter regarding the side windows. While they would like to see the conforming ones replaced, or those replaced with conforming windows, because the cost incurred was broken, and they apparently had several break-ins where they had out of the building. They are asking for their other in support experience. Cultural Resources Office, based on the fact that they are non-conforming windows and they are very free, recommend conservation of whole Dartmouth Mass application does not comply with the
Questions for staff?
Different question, the upper porch on the front, is that door and window an issue at all?
It's actually, I think it's boarded right now, and it may be because of the break-in. There's been a storm door there for a long time. It's actually a junction door behind there. I think there's a plywood panel there now.
So it's not an issue?
So I don't think that.
Further questions? Okay, we need the appellant, Mr. Miles.
Hi. Hello.
Need your name, please, sir?
Tim Miles.
Your address?
Where I live, 2233 Fenway Farms Trail.
And do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
What is your argument?
Yeah, I really don't have a great one. I'm throwing myself on the mercy of the board at this point in time. We did put brown aluminum in, but not the right type. And so I made a mistake. I feel like what we've done with the house and the windows looks much better than it did before. We did the changes. We had a lot of non-compliant issues before with the aluminum wrap that was there, and then the storm windows wouldn't pass muster since the 2006 McKinley Heights Historic District rules were put in place. So we've made it look a lot more like it did 105 years ago, but we didn't follow the rules exactly. To the left there's a school, so that big lot there is basically a school, and there's a community garden there. And we have had a couple of break-ins. They stole my 8 coils, so we're about 4,000 in the hole based on the break-ins that have taken place. So we replaced the front ones. I think the bottom 2 were done today with wood, and we're working on the other ones as well. And on the Jefferson door, we've got about 80 hours into that thing, and it's pretty cool now.
Commissioners, questions? Is there any further financial information you'd like to submit? We heard testimony. We had this letter. We had you say that you're into the house quite a lot. Do you have any estimates on what it would cost to replace those 6 on the facade?
Yeah, the front 4 cost me right under $3,000. The ones on the side are a little bit smaller, and there are only 5 of them that I'd have to replace. The one on the upper right-hand corner there, it was actually a really cool decorative glass that I've got about 40 hours into that, making it look like it did when it was built as well. So there's only 5 that I'd have to do. So I'm guessing it'd be somewhere around that $3,000, $3,500 range.
Do you agree that it's 5, not 6?
That's
Yeah, that's a really cool original wood.
Commissioners, questions? Anything else for the record, sir?
No, I appreciate you looking at it.
Commissioner Khalid, you have a question?
A question, this letter that just came through, that guy has some kind of authority in the neighborhood.
He's the president, Mark Reed.
Says committee chairman. Okay. I move that the Preservation Board grant the variances in this issue and allow the windows to be, to stay as constructed.
Any grounds for variance?
Financial.
Is there a second? Is there a second for discussion?
Okay.
Discussion.
Well, usually I wouldn't be putting forth such a motion, but that letter tipped it for me. We got the development chairman telling us, or pleading his case, or pleading the case of the applicant here. And he makes a strong case. There's been break-ins, and it would be cost prohibitive to replace what's there in the neighborhood that's kind of on the bubble. And that part of it.
Further discussion?
So we also had some pre-existing windows that were not compliant. So there's that one. Prior windows were not compliant with these windows. Ones that we took out.
The storm windows wouldn't have passed muster. What was that? Yeah, that's it.
Discussion? Commissioners, there's a motion on the floor. It's been made and seconded. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I believe the ayes have it. Commissioners, we're going to take a little break here.
Thank you.
Was that Mr. Khalid, is that confirmation? Oh, okay. Okay, that's funny, you know.
It was, but I don't think.
I mean, if we want to have to, I'm not sure if they name everybody else, because it's too obvious.
Yes, we're on break. Well, I should call a roll.
Well, wait a
Ladies and gentlemen, the reason we went out of order there was a medical emergency.
I have no questions I want to planning on what it is.
I don't know how to pause. I don't know how to pause this recording. We didn't get that far.
While you were gone, I found. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. But I really didn't.
Yeah. I think that's definitely not. I agree. I I'm sure the chair will allow you to stay up and go around in circles. When you're at a
dangerous looking boots.
Yeah, they're my keeping boots.
Excellent. I hope they're not going to come into play in the next agenda.
No, they might. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I don't think we'll need a marshal.
Yes, okay, still there. Oh, so I didn't know.
Meeting of the Preservation Board is back in session. We remain at Administrative Board hearing appeal of denials. All commissioners who were here before the break are back. So calling agenda item F2225.
Some of you may remember that in July, that we considered this demolition. I had denied the demolition of this building in the historic district, and the owner appealed and granted all of the demolition review criteria, and we asked him in testimony. And at that meeting, he found that, well, let's go through the pictures again. Here's the property, here's the location in Rainville neighborhood, National District. Some views of the building after the fire. Fire was earlier in the year. Mostly in the upper portion of the building, that fire set out. Water damage below, but there seems to be some exterior footage safety implications. So we found at that time that the Marriott building has been contributing property to the National Reservoir District. The ordinance for 689 states that narrow and qualifying structures will not be used in unusual circumstances. I've come to believe that fires are unexpected and unhappy circumstances, but people recover from them in various ways, but they can't, and every fire is an unusual circumstance. There's lower story brick walls, the second story portion of a house appears to be in some condition. The economic feasibility and hardship associated with this property must consider several factors, including the cost of repairs damage, the likelihood of financing of getting a loan for that work, and the availability of state and/or federal historic tax credits. We also noted that the location of the building between two other historic vacant buildings highlights its importance in the historic streetscape and district, but adds to the challenge of the economic and recovery of the building. One of these flanking buildings is owned by LRA. After giving some testimony, the property owner requested on the record that the board defer voting on the matter to allow her some time to discuss the proposed demolition with the Marineville Neighborhood Association and to market the building for sale. And the board felt the motion in support of that request. I'll take the motion, which is seconded by Mr. Davis. The board also asked her to provide additional documentation, including insurance information. So we are at the point now to resume consideration of this appeal, the denial of the demolition permit. I have no information to add.
Just to clarify, on page 39 of the minutes, it states the Preservation Board found that actually the Preservation Board was presented with information. Is that correct?
That would be.
Thank you.
So that concludes my presentation.
Yes. Everybody caught up? Okay. We need the appellant.
Afternoon. My name is Eric Zaromsky. I'm an attorney for Miss Abigail Lewis with TVD, Attorneys at Law.
This continues the previous appeal hearing.
Yes, it does.
And were you under oath before?
No, I was not.
Okay. Is the testimony going to be the truth?
It will.
Steve?
Thank you. We are at this time requesting approval of the plan to demolish the building that you can see in this photograph on two major bases. Number one being the structural soundness of the building. We have two separate engineering reports that both indicate that one, that the building is structurally unsound, not only in the brick that you can see on the second floor, but foundationally. Much of the mortar has been washed away over decades upon decades. Repairs were done, but the repairs were only enough to prolong the inevitable, that the foundation has begun to settle, that the fire has worsened this, the water that has continued to precipitate through the open roof has worsened this. So we also have communication from Ms. Young's insurance company that they consider the building to be a total loss. They say that there's mold damage, water damage to the basement, and that any repair, any rehab project is going to vastly outstrip her $296,000 policy limit.
You have that document?
I'm sorry, yes I do. I have limited copies of everything that I'm referencing, so
if you're building a record, so if you want it in the record, you should give it to us.
Sure. Actually, let's go ahead and, if I can, just submit the two engineering reports that I referenced as well.
Absolutely.
So back to point one being the structural unsoundness of the building. I think there's ample evidence to suggest that demolition of the property is warranted in this situation. To the second point...
Just to clarify, your argument there turns on the engineering reports?
On both engineering reports in addition to the insurance information.
Do they reference the ordinance's definition of the word sound?
I'm sorry that I don't know if they do, but it's my understanding that the soundness is, the definition of soundness in the ordinance is somewhat open to interpretation.
By us.
Okay.
Correct.
So I think based on those two engineering reports, based on the information that we've uncovered about the settling of the foundation, I believe that it should come into the purview of the ordinance and into the scope of the definition of the term sound.
Do you recall seeing the word 6 months anywhere in the engineering report?
No, I do not recall that.
Okay. Steve, I'm sorry.
Okay. To my second point, the economic feasibility of repairing the structure. Ms. Willis has contacted 4 separate real estate agencies who have all patently refused to list the house, okay, based on several factors, being the overall damage to the property, the cost, just the sheer cost of rehabbing this to standards that would be along the lines of what this board is going to be looking for. The fact that the 2 adjacent properties are vacant, one of them being LRA owned for, I believe, 5 years or better, and unfortunately, if the LRA hasn't been able to sell its building, which is structurally intact, it's the opinion of the real estate agencies that we've contacted that there's just no way we're going to be able to find a private buyer for this. To the point that the surrounding properties are vacant, even if Ms. Willis were able to get a mortgage, it wouldn't be possible for her to get a renter in there until the rehab is done. So again, the cost of this is far going to outstrip anything that she's going to be able to do as far as rehab and to make it economically viable. And frankly, just the cost would bankrupt her. So additionally,
is there financial information to that effect that you'd like to introduce to the record?
Unfortunately, I haven't had enough time to get together any documents from any proposed lenders or anything like that. So, but to this other point, board ups have been done, repeated board ups. and those have continued to be torn down by vandals. Vandals have come into the property, have stripped it completely of wiring, have stripped it completely of copper, have stripped it completely of its HVAC. It is not more than a shell at this point, and I believe the pictures that you see don't reflect the sheer extent of the damage that's been done, and I believe the engineering reports show the fire damage, but since those reports were taken, we've had massive amounts of vandalization, criminal activity inside the property.
Do you have those police reports for the record?
I don't know that we have made police reports. No, we haven't made any police reports. But again, if you were to step into the property, you can see where the copper has been taken out, where the electricity has been torn out, where the HVAC is gone, that there has been, multiple instances of vandalism. Each board up that has been attempted has been torn down. The cellar door has been torn off. So this property is attracting a very bad element, and it continues to stand. I believe that reconstruction efforts would be extraordinarily difficult due to the vandalization. I believe that any company who would otherwise be willing to come in and invest the time and energy into rehabbing this property is going to find that their building materials and their tools are being stolen. So, to those points, I firmly believe that this property should be ripe for demolition.
Do any other records you'd like to introduce?
No, I do not at this time.
Commissioners, questions? Thank you. It's your presentation. Do you want the owner to speak?
I'm sorry?
Do you want the owner to speak?
No, I don't think that'll be necessary. I think the board has the information that we have.
Ms. Spencer? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So my name is Kara Spencer, and I'm representing the Marine Villa Neighborhood Association. Would you like me to?
Is your testimony to be the truth?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm representing the Marine Villa Neighborhood Association. I live 3 blocks from this house, and I would like to reiterate that this is a contributing resource to the Marine Villa neighborhood, which is a National Historic Neighborhood. It is located, Betsy pulled up the map earlier, but it is located less than a block from a very prominent intersection, a very visible intersection, and this building is very visible from that prominent intersection, very important, perhaps the most important intersection in our neighborhood. As the lawyer, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, Eric, was pointing out, there were engineering reports provided. They were provided to the Marine Villa neighborhood. We did have a chance to review those, and we did take those and have those reviewed independently. And we found that although they did show total destruction, as Eric pointed out, much of this destruction was based on not the fire, but decades of neglect on the tuck pointing and the basement and in the foundation of the building, and had absolutely nothing to do with the fire. The neighborhood and Abby, we've been in good contact. She has been, she's met with us on several occasions, returned phone calls, and has been working with us to kind of come up with a solution that would work. We offered to help her market it, to introduce her to real estate agents that could effectively put this for sale. At that point, we didn't hear anything back from Abby anymore. With that, I would like to say that there is a very growing interest in Marine Villa. It's very close to Cherokee Street. The Cherokee Street neighborhoods are generating a lot of interest from both residents and developers. I think that this building here is a very important contributing part to a very important intersection in that community. As Eric pointed out, Abby received $294,000, I believe, in insurance, 96, excuse me, 74, which I think is held up until resolution is determined on this building. So for $296,000, we think that we could, it wouldn't be a hardship, we wouldn't have to get a mortgage, we could use that money, or we could attempt to market it effectively and see if there is a developer who would be willing to come in and develop it. I myself offered to take photos, posted on Craigslist, and contacted many developers and real estate agents that I know personally that would be willing, potentially, to list it if I had had her permission to do so. So I would like the board to consider not approving of the demolition until there was an adequate amount of, any amount whatsoever of legitimate work done to market it, to see if we could get somebody in there to develop it. There are way worse off buildings owned by LRA in the city that aren't getting demoed. This is a very important piece of the fabric of Chippewa, which is a very important street in our city. So I would like to see demo denied.
Questions?
And I represent the whole neighborhood association in that.
Questions from Ms. Spencer? Commissioners, I would only say, knowing Ms. Spencer, that her offer to market is a formidable one. She is...
I also do personally know some developers who are interested in it, interested in knowing what the owner would take for the property, and so it was disappointing to not have that opportunity to try and find somebody to work with this.
Commissioners, that concludes the testimony.
I recommend that the preservation board vote the director's denial of the demolition.
Second.
There may be more to the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is there more to the motion?
And that appropriate steps will be taken to stabilize and preserve the building.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion? Counselor?
Well, so I remember this particular agenda item from 3 months ago, and I also recall at that point in time I was leaning towards demolition, and I think what has changed that is the issue about insurance that was like pushing that push this back and try and market it. So I am pointed that it's not been marketed, or there is no evidence, I should say, of it being marketed over the last 3 months, although I do see that we have information stating that it's not found for the engineers, but
The definition of our ordinance is slightly different.
absolutely, yeah. So, given the lack of of it being marketed, and what the insurance is willing to cover, I'm pretty confident that the building could
Commissioner Richardson here to do that little calculation that he does on what's $196,000 leverage. Is there further discussion?
I wanted to mention that the neighborhood was advised that in 2009, the building was purchased for $10,500 at an auction. There's a mortgage for $42,000, that indeed the fire insurance was $296,000. Demolition would be $9,000, and that the cost of a roof was estimated with additional items to putting on the roof of $45,000. And the $74,000 are now being held by the city. They were not for quite some time.
prior to the last meeting, it had not been confirmed as a seller for the city. It's now confirmed that they are.
That's good, Commission. Is there further discussion? Okay, Commissioners, at the nagging insistence of council, I'm going to call a roll. Commissioner Fassman, there is a motion on the floor to make, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Khalid, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Vincent-Tamer, yes or no?
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt, yes or no?
Yes.
Did I miss anyone? The director's denial is upheld. Agenda item I, please, next to 17. I don't have it split. Is the G sheet here? Okay. No. This one will do it. I'm sorry, I need to go back and do agenda item sheet. 2861 Missouri.
There's 2861 hybrid that Andre Megan or enter into record by ordinance 64689 and amended by 6495 and 67115 that's 2861 Missouri. The applicant came in to apply for a permit for windows that had been installed as permit. The windows were apparently previously vinyl, but they've been replaced with vinyl windows. 13 windows on the side in front of the building were replaced. After receiving a citation, the applicant replaced the front-facing windows, including here, but unfortunately didn't get a permit for that either. However, the windows that they did replace are vinyl windows, front facing windows. However, the windows in question are the side windows here. They are located on what is considered a joint split facade. Under the Benton Park Historic District standard, it's 15 or more feet away from the neighboring structure, then it is considered a joint facade. This is actually 17 feet. Due to the proximity to the sidewalk and the fact that the building next door is a one-story building, those windows are very street. Windows do not meet the historic district standard. The proposed do not replicate the historic window in a manner. The example is that installed by a window wider than the historic window. The slip rail is considerably lower and the median rail is narrow and the total glass size is reduced. The window also has a very flat appearance. Based on the preliminary findings, the resource officer recommends that conservation uphold the director's denial of application of this classified with there have been the owners have contacted the Event Park, Historic Neighborhood Association. But there has been no, they have not made a decision.
Questions, Commissioners?
The Alderman taking a position.
Okay, we need the appellant. Are you Brett and Ryan?
Yes.
Okay, you all can arrange yourselves any way you want to. Just tell me both your names, both your addresses, and for assurance that both of you are going to tell the truth.
Sure. Ryan Russell, 1031 Bernice Avenue.
Brad Johnson, 7566 Reynolds Avenue.
Is your testimony going to be the truth?
It is.
Okay, what's up?
Thanks for hearing us. We, like Tony before us, made a mistake. Ignorance is not bliss. The timeline of everything, we had an architect do our drawings. The architect, from our understanding, put the windows on it. Between us, our architect, and our contractor, there was communication breakdown. All the windows were installed. The home inspector came through, told us there was a problem. At that time, that's when we went to them, and we asked them what we could do. They said it's about 15 foot. So we measured it, not trying to straws, but it's about 16 feet, some inches. So we were just over it. We were thinking, hoping that we could come here after we've done the front windows and get your approval, because we had tried to comply. Obviously, we weren't trying to get by with anything. We did hire an architect. We put over $120,000 into this project. We too have had a break-in, copper line stolen, and the additional windows, just because I know it's important to you, it sounds like they're going to cost us about another $4,000. To the point that she mentioned, we did communicate with Bent Park Housing Corporation or their organization. I contacted Timothy Mulligan on numerous occasions. I corresponded with him both via phone and email. I emailed him on 10/1 with photos along with a detailed story of our instance. He could not get the photos. I put them in a Dropbox folder. Apparently his server at work could not open them. I contacted him on Monday last week. I emailed him asking if he had had a chance to review it. I contacted him on Thursday of last week. And I contacted him on Friday. He did not respond until Friday at like 5:50, at which point in time he told me that he had not had a chance to look at them. I had voiced that it was somewhat displeasing that he had not told me until that time. I asked him if there was anything I could do to get him the photos and the information that he wanted at that time. He responded to me this morning. At like 8 o'clock, I got him the information that I could. At 8:50, I got an email correspondence from him while I was here stating that he could get it to the rest of the members, but they could not make a decision.
Is your testimony that Mr. Mulligan is infuriating?
No.
Because I would stipulate to that.
No. We tried. I could have reached out before last Monday, so certainly my fault as well, as was the case with the window.
Okay, I was willing to take testimony much stronger than that. Have you guys worked in Benton Park before?
We have, but we did not replace any windows on previous projects. We just recently started doing more and more projects in the city. This is our second project at Benton Park.
It may be a learning experience.
Certainly is.
Commissioners, questions?
What was it? I have a question.
Did we get the ordinance?
Yes.
I have a question. What was it, 15 feet, 16 feet and a half?
So from our understanding, it has to be 15 feet
That's what the ordinance states, 15 feet between structures. And she indicated it was 17 feet. I think I tape measure to it, 16 feet, 4 inches. So if you round up, 17 feet, but we're just over the 15 feet mark.
So it is something public, by the definition of the ordinance.
It is, correct.
I thought I heard testimony, however, so I'll just ask you, did you replace the the window over the door portion on that back?
We did.
So the part that faces toward the front?
The window that faces the front, we replaced. Just not the side 8 windows.
Thank you.
Questions? Have you submitted everything you want for the record?
Yeah, we don't have any photos or any documentations supporting the numbers that I gave you, but if I have, yes.
We do have your testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor.
I move that the preservation board not oppose director's denial as to the 8 windows on the side that is 17 feet. The reason for that is hardship.
Is there a second? Is there a second for discussion? Sponsor? Or Jimmy?
They have replaced the other ones that face directly.
Previous one we approved had some support from the neighborhood. That's the difference here.
Yeah.
And I know they expressed a lot of frustration getting support.
Right.
That's was the, I guess.
Well, if I had something from the alderman or the local district, that would be entirely different. We don't handle it. So I'm sure that Mr. Mulligan is completely able to tell us when he's unhappy about a situation. I've heard of this. So I would think that he would at least send us something.
Not having any additional information, I think the difference between agenda item and the other one that we approved. Although I will note that I will be willing to defer this until the next meeting, so that the neighborhood association could in fact respond.
Up to the appellant, has to waive time period of appeal. On the other hand, likely to stress Mr. Mulligan. So I'm inclined to like it.
With the song.
Okay.
My only concern would be that we do have the property.
Come on back up a little closer so we can preserve this for the record. For the record, my question for you is, would you be willing to waive a timely hearing on this subject in order to attempt to gather community consultation, given that the general, although there is a motion that favors you on the table, which would go away, my bet is that sentiment on this board could go in either direction.
Sure.
There's a movie line about feeling lucky, but I'm not going to do that.
My concern is twofold. First, we have the property listed as this right now, so we are prepared, if you guys would uphold the motion, to put in windows. Certainly, we don't want to do that, but we're trying to sell the property, so we really don't want to delay it. That being said, not under contract at this time, certainly could go to November. My other concern, and I'm going to be very frank, is I don't have a whole lot of faith that they're going to uphold. And I don't know that, just by what I've been told. So I don't want to decline it, but I think it's best in our favor to either move forward. Either way.
Okay, commissioners, is there any further discussion? There's a motion on the floor to overturn the director's denial. We'll take a vote on that first and see if we need a subsequent motion after that. And I will, when I locate my roll sheet, call it. There is a motion on the floor to overturn the director's denial. Commissioner Schmidt, do you favor that or oppose that motion?
It's my motion. Aye.
Commissioner Byzantiner, do you favor or oppose? Aye. Commissioner Killeen, do you favor it or oppose it?
Oppose.
Commissioner Robinson, do you favor or oppose it?
Oppose.
Commissioner Fassman, do you favor or oppose it?
Favor.
Then 3 yeses, 2 noes. The motion to overturn the director's denial is upheld. Calling the final agenda item. I would not have had on that outcome. There's one more missing exhibit in that last thing. Something?
We started to pass it back. Here they are. I did pass it.
Good, thank you.
That's not on the last.
Okay, this is, what the heck? This is agenda item 8. Commissioner Robinson has recused himself. On the presence of quorum.
Their reason, for to tell the truth,
Just walk in.
record, survey copy of ordinance 64689, that is amended by 64925, and ordinance 69112, the lobbyist for. It is 19 Central Record Street, section side. Is the location of the project or in record. The portion of the block. This is garage door on the addition that faces the record, a bigger addition to the building. The other garage door on the side. I'm going to go ahead and submit into the record the letter from the LSRC. They were in general support of the project, and they, on 3 issues, one of which was the closure of this garage door. Originally, it was proposed to be kind of storefront panels, storefront window panels. LSRC is wanting them to enclose it with brick and basically make it look like the other windows on this side. And they feel that that was not a historic alteration of the building, that it was not original to the building. This injury was put in sometime later. We're okay with that. Now, on the other garage door, we still feel that that it needs to be look like a garage door, even if it's windows, black garage door. They're proposing a storefront windows panels beneath it, which doesn't believe in the garage door standard. One of the other issues which the LSRC was okay with because they called this a private facade. However, under the standards, we believe this is a secondary public facade, as one of the definitions is other sidewall that is more than 4 feet away from the adjacent building if it's a public area, which is on an alley. It is from the street and the alley. So we consider this a secondary public facade. Kind of a close-up of one of the openings that they are proposing to take the infill out of and replace it with a front-light system. As you see, there is a panel down here and then we believe that they should be, they were originally putting down doors, they should be, they should have an H&B the other is the man door here, same thing, it requires a certain model example, and looks like a door. Other issue, which the LSRC was okay with, we are not, is the enclosure of these are on a sort of private facade, but we believe that the standards are pretty clear that if you're installing windows of a facade, it has to be done in a certain way. They are wanting to continue with is a section of the building that we're talking about. Currently, part of the wall is corrugated metal. They are wanting to basically cover a few of the windows with corrugated metal instead of brick. Another main issue is regarding the fencing parking lot at this location. As you can see, fencing runs from the edge of the building and then goes out slightly straight in front of the building line, and then goes back slightly in front of the neighboring building. Now, the building line on the street, I believe, is probably at the location of the front of the house, because all the rest of the houses are at that line. The standard requires that any street fences be set back 1 foot from the front of So which would mean that it would have to come back to this location, not be in front of line. Which would obviously set in the fence itself is okay. The fence is 6 foot, however, the posts are a little taller than that. It's a metal fence for years. The type of fencing is a problem. The other problem we have with the parking lot is this closure here, which is split space in use, which is not I think would be considered, especially since it's not a private station. I also have a letter to Alderwoman for support of the project.
I note that neither the fence nor the parking lot is mentioned in the findings and conclusions. Is there a reason for that? Or did I misread it?
It just mentioned it in the heading, or right at the top of that. It's specified as
Would you like us to consider it or not consider it?
yes.
Is your presentation conclusive?
Cultural Resources Office recommends preservation board uphold the director's denial of the application. Not
Commissioners, questions? Melanie?
question.
And I don't know if this is for you, but the Alderwoman's letter says that she supports what the Lafayette Square Restoration Group supports, and the rest of the restoration didn't support a great deal.
Well, they supported most of it other than they wanted that garage door changed.
Okay, let's clarify. You can, maybe they don't support a lot of this recommendation.
Mr. Houghton,
They do support a lot of the project.
Right.
Mr. Houghton clarified.
Any questions? You didn't see what?
Yes.
Told you. You just wake up. Thank you. Mr. Houghton?
Picked up the sign-up list before the application.
I did. Okay, let's hear the appellant first. You all accepted this entire thing and not signed the list?
Oh, my God.
Okay.
We came late.
And almost missed it. Come on up and sign it.
Yes, sir.
Here, use my Sharpie. Okay, you all may arrange yourselves in any way that you want, as long as each of you gives his name and address and promise to tell the truth.
Leonard Adewemi, 1917 North Meadow, Cross Township. Al Levine, 8630 Delmar,
You've heard the staff's case and reason for denial. You're asking us to overturn that denial. What is the basis?
Well, I'd like to address each item individually because there are different issues that apply to each item. I would like to take it in the order that I think has the most impact on the neighborhood and building, but some of them are very important issues and some of them are a little bit of non-compliance. We think the most important visible item is the garage door that faces Mississippi. That, as far as we can tell, is a later addition to the building. All the window openings are the same size. You can tell on the inside of the building the original concrete floor was cut and a ramp was put in to make the access to Mississippi. So in talking with the neighborhood and our consultant who's also here, Maureen Jones, has been working on the project longer than I have. And so what we think is a good solution for that is to use brick infill with a precast sill to match all of the rest of the building. The building has been painted for many years so that you would not be able to tell the difference on the face of the building. What we also talked about with the historic, with the Lobby Square Committee, was to restore the sidewalk, which is the brick sidewalk in front of the garage, had been removed and replaced with concrete, so that would be restored, and the curb cut would be removed and restored.
It sounds like you have the concurrence of the group on that, of the alderman on that, and a grudging concurrence of staff on that.
Yes, and by the way, and I think we'll hear from the committee, is that when we met with the committee, we did not have the full report from staff to look at some of the other items, and I apologize for not following up myself.
So what's your next one?
The next one are the windows on the alley side, or the proposed windows on the alley side. This is a residential building now, so it's being converted to all apartments. We need every window we can get. The original dock doors and the man door on the alley side have long since been blocked up. The doors have been removed, painted block as what I would guess is from the 1970 or so edition. So that what we're proposing to do is to remove the infill masonry, and it's a large wide opening, duplicate the windows that are in the rest of the building, and also at this point put in a brick sill and stone to match the rest of the building. It'll be painted so that it'll be identical with the rest of the building. The next item has...
I think your testimony that facade is a private facade?
I can't determine whether it's a private facade because I'm not an expert in the ordinance. Perhaps there's some discussion that we'll hear later that it might be interpreted as a private facade because it's on the alley.
Thank you. We call that presaging. I like that.
That's right. I'm giving you a little teaser.
Okay, what's next?
The next item has to do with the infill of the windows on the 1970 edition. This is a steel frame building on a concrete foundation. The paneling between the windows is corrugated metal. We think that just to take another piece of metal where it's a continuous ribbon of windows that just does not work with putting an apartment in there. So we think that the correct solution for that is to duplicate. We have two 3-foot wide window panels that we would like to blank out. And we simply cover that with corrugated metal to match the rest of that facade of the building. It's in one of the pictures there. And that it would be what's there. And you'll be able to see the photos, but those are there in between each of the windows, metal panels. So we'd like your help on that, which we think is the correct solution for that, as appropriate for 1970s industrial.
Are you permanently abandoning those buildings?
Those windows? Yes.
Or are you simply masking them?
Those we'd be covering over with the metal panel. Now there would be an alternate solution, and if this would be acceptable, it's not out of the question, is to simply blank out the windows, leave them in place, and pour over them on the inside, and we just have a blanked out, painted black window from the inside. And that would be acceptable. We'd be happy to do that. Next one is the garage door facing Rutgers. This is also a 1970s metal garage door. I don't believe that there's I don't have a historic solution. The best that we could do on that we propose was to duplicate the window size of all the adjacent windows in the building and do that in storefront. And we're asking for your concurrence on that because we think it's a reasonable solution for a 1970s garage door being turned into an apartment. Now,
I have to say, I don't maintain a great deal of enthusiasm defending a 1970s garage door.
Yes. I mean, I would rather not leave it in place. So,
although you could put it up and put the window behind it.
Well, I have to provide closure for the building. That would be a good way to do it. At one point, we entertained glass block, and we think that's not a good solution.
No, that's a terrible.
That was a very early solution. So, what I'd like to talk a little bit about...
If you're going to say glass block again, could you give some sort of prior notice?
Okay. I think corrugated metal is probably in the same category. By the way, one of the things that we discussed with staff is we have an existing penthouse on the building that has brick on two sides on the corner of the building, and currently it has corrugated metal on the other two sides. And plus, we're building a new stair penthouse, which at the time our drawings show putting corrugated metal to match the other corrugated metal in the building. But in talking with staff, we said, let's just do hardy board on that. We'll just replace everything on the existing penthouse with siding and on the new penthouse, and that will be hardy board. It's not really visible, but the new penthouse is in the middle of the building. The existing penthouse is brick on the two exterior sides. I'd like to talk a little bit about the site plan because I think we have really solved what was a very bad situation with the driveway on Rutger. Because this is an industrial building, you can sort of see it in the photograph. There is hidden parking for a paved area that goes about 75 feet east of the corner of the building. On the you can see where we're replacing a portion of the concrete pavement with new curb cut and driveway and brick sidewalk to match the rest of the sidewalk. So currently that entire portion of the parking lot is hidden parking with additional fenced parking further into the lot. So we wanted to get a certain number of parking spaces, and what we've done is the entire parking lot went up to the curb. So for the portion of the parking lot immediately adjacent to the building, we're setting the fence back a couple of feet from the face of the existing building and putting a sliding gate to the parking. Once we get past the entrance,
I don't think that is a matter currently under discussion.
Oh, okay.
I speak Gagan not all that fluently, but I think she is concerned about those piers.
Great. If we had to, I would lower the pier. I'm looking for your forbearance that we want the fence to be 6 foot high, and we have the piers another couple of inches higher so that it acts as a termination. Andrew, did you want to?
Yes, I know, it is an issue. Because...
Again, I'm thrown off because it doesn't show up in the conclusion.
Well, it's in the but it is not, I don't believe this is the actual building I street.
No.
So it's, the standards say that it has to be put back. That's
How far back is it?
Well, it's actually in front of the other building. I mean, all of it's in front of the other.
This is approximately, the building's current setback is around 12 feet from the property line. This building is about 3 feet from the property line. The proposed fence is about a foot in front of the property line, in front of the base of the adjacent building. The fence here is about a foot back from the face of the original building. So we run the fence straight across there and cut back so that by the time you hit residential structures down the street, we're approximately at the face of the building. We did this so that we thought that the 1 foot would be admissible by appeal because of gaining or very traditional so that's our thinking on the fence on the front. We've gone through our zoning review to the Board of Public Service on this, and this is acceptable. The last item has to do with the trash enclosure, and while I understand why brick might be something that would be preferred, we think that painted concrete masonry is appropriate for this building, again, because the entire rear of the building, just point that the entire rear of the addition of the building is painted concrete, and the little extension of the dock that goes out here is painted concrete and painted metal, that the trash enclosure for a building that's just painted, there would be no reason not to just do painted concrete masonry. We're looking for your comments on that. Would you like to talk?
I agree with everything that you said.
That's always handy. Commissioners, questions? Sorry, have you did everything?
I believe I've addressed all the issues we need to address.
Is there anything else you'd like to say for the rest? Okay. Commissioners, questions? Keith? Last, possibly.
Familiar position. I'm Keith Houghton, 1805 LaSalle. I swear to tell the truth. We met last Thursday, we being the Lafayette Square Development Committee, with the developer and the alderman was there. We did only discuss 3 subjects that are in my email. We did not discuss the fence or the record garage door or the trash. So her approval, speaking for her, she was in that discussion. She was only addressing the 3 big issues. I'll skip Mississippi since that seems resolved. The question of the facade facing the alley, frankly, I don't know what facade that is. In our current code, there are 7 different labels for facades in the definition section. And I couldn't sort it out. I couldn't come up with Andrea's conclusion. All I can say is traditionally, this was a big issue with the Union Club because it had 4 faces to the streets. I've been on this committee now 7 years. We have always allowed the property to have at least 1 private facade. So we worked under the assumption that that's a private facade. We agreed with that solution of the brick, move the concrete block through the brick. I would point out on the corrugated metal over the windows, and this probably applies to the large garage door, that there is a section in our code that has, it's 211.1 about rehab of a non-historic building, and it basically says, it shall not be remodeled to assume a historic or modern appearance. So that, and combined with the fact that, I know it's not the strict interpretation, but when we have non-conforming material, which the corrugated metal would be, when you do a repair, if it's less than 50%, we don't require them to go back and replace the other 60%. Well, this is an addition, it's not a true repair, but to put some other kind of material there and then still have the rest of the corrugated, we think would be more, look worse than the corrugated metal. And again, we're saying that's a private facade. I will comment that as far as the fence is concerned, on Rutger, facing close to the street, talking to the Rutger neighbors, the block captain and some of the neighbors, their biggest concern is that there is enough parking. In fact, that they were absolutely worked up about that. And as I understand it, there's 30 parking spaces and there are 30 apartments, and that's right at the minimum by the city codes. So if they push the fence back at all and lose a parking place, they're also going to lose an apartment, or they're going to have an uprising from neighbors. We are glad to see that we'll probably get at least one, maybe two parking spaces back on record where they have closed off the cut. And then we'll get a parking space back on Mississippi where we remove the cut. Like I said, we didn't really get a chance in the committee to discuss all those issues in the again, the trash enclosure. To us, that was a private facade, a private area on an alley, and the alley is tight with garages on the other side, individual garages. So we would have a fairly accommodating approach to that.
So you prefer the corrugated metal to the blank-out windows from the inside option that you consider?
I'm having a little trouble visualizing the blank-out windows. Are you saying that the window would still be there, but it would be painted on the backside?
Well, actually, I think the dark windows might...
They're pretty dark anyway. They're probably non-compliant now because they're heavily tinted. To me, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. Whatever works for them.
Thank you. David, you want to add anything? Okay.
Is staff happier with windows rather than corrugated? So 6 of one and half dozen of the other.
This will require the finesse of a lawyer to make this motion.
And he's not here.
And yet there's one here. There's 2 here, but only one can make motions. Will have to be you.
Sure.
You'll help.
So that we
It was a big issue first.
well, they're going to be happy with it. If we overturn the director's denial,
For everything?
for everything, but require that the windows on the private alley side at the top be blanked out windows from the inside as opposed to covered.
I would question the form of that motion. If it is a private facade, then I don't think you would thought.
The alley side.
I think that's a finding that hasn't been made. There's been testimony about what type of facade it is,
So,
I'll just say alley side.
good.
I need to repeat
Yes,
the motion.
nope. Motion to discuss.
And everything else is okay.
That's what the motion.
That's a good motion.
The second discussion. Okay. Motion?
I do.
Wow.
Thanks. It's fairly simple. Just any outstanding issues here. I move that the preservation board uphold the director's denial, and that the applicant work with staff to address the outstanding issues. It doesn't seem like it's no. See if there's a second before I start discussing.
Second.
So it just a lot of issues here. I don't know how much debate's been going on in the finance and board. Sounds like some, or I mean staff. Sounds like some, but seems like a lot of things that could be worked out. Perhaps I'm mistaken. Is that why they're here? That just couldn't work out these issues with you all?
I mean, we expressed I mean, different parts. I spoke to you about that early on. That was the first thing in the preliminary review we had.
Do we have further discussion?
Well, at first it seemed to me like there was a lot of disagreement on what's going on. But as I looked at this, there appears to be, at least from the alderman in the historic, there appears to be a little difference from what's being proposed. So maybe the one difference is the window corrugated. There's a difference on the trash enclosure, which seems to be a major difference, at least not for the historic community. The fence, certainly the fence could be moved back more, but there seems to be a disjoint in terms of where this building's frontage is. So part of the building does sit on the back, and they're trying to make it along the whole line. And if they put it farther back, then they lose parking space. So obviously, if the historic committee had found this to be a major issue, then I would go much different. So then it comes out to those windows in the back. It seems to me that it make everybody a little happy and everybody not totally happy.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion on this, Commissioners? The motion on the floor is to uphold the director's denial. Per
Weaver, if I may offer the grounds that the alterations do not comply with the Lafayette Square Historic District standard. Thanks.
There is a motion on the floor. I'm going to call a roll on that motion. Motion fails to pass. Another one. Motion passes. Commissioner Fassman, yes or no?
The director's denial, yes.
Commissioner Killeen, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Bitzenhager, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt, yes or no?
Aye.
Because the director's denial is upheld. Commissioner, do you have any further business?
Yes, sir.
We'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I forgot something very important. Your curiosity, last curiosity, surprised me. Somebody else didn't use our table.
I do.
Yeah.
How could that be? Actually, I thought maybe somebody had just walked by, found a comfortable chair, and a compelling reason to sit here.
Some of you have grouping, so this is even better. We have Lorraine Lee has joined us as member graduate Miss Baccalaureate internship. She's helping us with a variety of things. She's studied architecture and math, and is eager to learn and understand as well. So we're very happy to be here.
You're welcome. Will this make Mr. Rowe a happier person? Because he has been a very grumpy bear.
Yes, very happy to have you.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Commissioners, we stand adjourned.